We always want to communicate 300 things in B2B because I understand why. There's a tech guy team, usually it's a guy though, that has built it. They're very smart, they're very proud, and they think the whole world needs to know.
Welcome to WITT. Hi, I'm Megan. I talk with founders, investors, and operators working in tech. My aim is to inspire you with their stories and perspectives. Through this podcast, I want to amplify the voice of women working in tech. If you want to support WITT, then make sure you follow us on your favourite podcasting app. Then you won't miss any future episodes. Today's guest is Diana, a fractional CMO and founder of Fame Overflow, the voice behind B2B that made me feel things. She's here to talk about smart growth in tech and how to make marketing actually move people. Let's get started. Hi Diana, welcome to WITT. It's great to have you on the podcast.
I'm really excited to be here, Megan.
Awesome. I would love to kick off our conversation with the lightning round. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it. I'm ready.
Let's jump straight into it. Okay, so first question. What is your favorite, creativity or consistency?
Oof, creativity, 100%. No lies there.
Nice. Question number 2. Are you a summer cottage person or a ski resort person?
I'm 100% ski resort person. I'm a snowboarding instructor, so that would make sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Question number 3. If you weren't in marketing, what would you be doing?
Journalism. I wanted to be a journalist when I was little. I wanted to write, tell stories, find out interesting stuff and tell the world. And honestly, that's kind of what I'm doing now. And it's not politically dangerous. So that's
always good.
It's a consideration if you're going to become a journalist.
It's quite important. Question number 4. What is your favorite brand?
That's a tricky one. You're asking a marketing person. Now I'm supposed to be like, bam, bam, bam. Whoop. There you go. I'm wearing a Whoop. There you go. That makes all the sense in the world. And they are, shall I tell you why?
Yeah, sure.
They definitely take, in terms of share of conversation in our household, Whoop takes a large space for a fitness tracker. It's the first thing I look at in the morning, not my partner, my Whoop stats. The last thing I look at night and many times throughout the day, and it guides my life. Today it's trying to tell me whether I should go to the gym or not, or I'll make sure it does by the end of the day. Yeah, Whoop, great brand. And they're investing into female health a lot. So they're tracking hormone cycle, etc., to tell you what's good for you depending on the week, rather than just treating you as a man for whom most days are kind of the same. So Whoop, 10 stars.
Right. Love it. That's really good. Question number 5. What is one underrated skill for a CMO?
Calmness.
Okay.
Calmness. Any marketing leadership job is honestly extremely hard because you have to be good at your craft. Your craft changes every few months with a new tool coming out. You have to be really strategic, but you also have to execute. You have to hire the right people. You have to give them a career progression at a time where nobody knows what their progression is, given the revolution in the industry right now, and AI is making this a little even less predictable. Then you have to engage with other functions, product and sales. You got to make friends with those guys. You got to manage upwards. And I'm not sure if that superhuman exists who's doing all of that to 100% degree every day, hand on heart, and is sane.
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of zen does one need to live in.
Yeah, who knows, honestly. It's pretty crazy. Question number 6. What is the most common thing founders get wrong about brands?
Founders think that they don't need a brand. That's what I keep encountering. I mean, brand is kind of a bit of a dirty word in tech, which is really sad because there is a reason why we have brand as a discipline. It's core discipline that tells you what you can actually impact in the market. And almost every founder I speak to, bar a few, say that, we just need leads fast. As if the prerequisite to getting leads fast isn't figuring out your value prop, figuring out your product market fit, your positioning, communication, what channels, what language you're talking to whom, what campaigns you're running so that you're even visible. All of those are prerequisites to the end game, which is give me leads and make my business work.
Yeah.
So that is a pretty big damn misconception.
I mean, I would say so.
And you have to sort of educate founders about it in gentlest way possible, right? Because if they come to you and you're like, I need leads, and you are taking them back 10 steps, that's probably not a message that will land you the gig.
Yeah, probably not.
Right. So you have to kind of hold their hand through it and find some sort of happy medium.
Definitely. That's really great. Okay, next question. What role, you talked about this, what role do you think AI plays in marketing?
Oof. So I would say I'm an AI realist, not
Okay.
skeptic, because I use a bunch of AI and I
Right.
also have a list of AI that I should try, but I
Okay.
haven't actually gotten my hands on trying them in a real project or with my own stuff. So there's a backlog, but at the same time I'm very aware of the limitations of AI. So in my books, I mean, ChatGPT is a bestie, right? When it comes to audience research, company research, segmentation, data analysis, you gotta check on the data analysis. Sometimes it's a bit rubbish at that. It's fairly good. When it comes to conceptual thinking, it's absolutely terrible. When it comes to creative ideas, it's poor. At best, it will give you the average of the category, and obviously then you're not going to stand out, so it might as well not bother. When it comes to content creation, the sort of rational and structuring thing, it's incredible, but it's never, I tell people, it's never made me laugh, right? AI has never made me laugh or cry or made me think, damn, that's a really good idea, right? So we got to be aware that AI will serve you a good enough. And sometimes good enough answer is good enough, right? When it comes to, say, for example, SEO, you just need to output commentary about your vertical and comparison. Product marketing is stuff. Very good. When it comes to big ideas, creative campaigns, so. When it comes to campaign attribution, sometimes if I'm like, oh, I think this is happening if I look at the dashboard. And it was like, yeah, it could also be this. No, but it can't be this because this. Okay, yeah, you're right. It's a sparring partner, because if you're staring at a dashboard with metrics, eventually you do go crazy on your own. And suddenly I don't have to go crazy. And one really sort of honest use case that I have for AI that isn't even anything to do specifically with marketing. And I'm wondering if more people use it that way. And we're just not talking about it because it's not as sexy as writing a post about AI use cases in marketing. When I'm not sure on interpersonal stuff, right? Like I'm writing an email, a follow-up, what's the right tone of voice to this person based on the language that they used in the right email. But should I frame it like this? Should I mention that or this? I debate. It probably hates me, but I debate a lot in terms of fine-tuning the messages when it comes to just interpersonal follow-up. And I would compare it to, sitting in an office and grabbing your colleague and say, read this email for me. Do you think that's a good email to send? That's how I use ChatGPT, basically.
Yeah. So like a colleague. Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
Like a colleague.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Next question. What is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Ooh. That I don't. Bailey's. I'm gonna go with Bailey's ice cream.
Bailey's. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. Very nice. And then last question for the lightning round is, if you had to describe your kind of journey in 3 emojis, what would they be and why?
Life journey or marketing journey?
I would say overall.
You know that emoji with the exploding head?
Yep.
Just give me 3 of those.
Okay. All of the same. Okay. Interesting. I've never had that before. But
just give me 3 of those. Story of my life.
Okay. Do you want to expand on that?
I think when it comes to, if we're thinking specifically about career, but maybe that's applicable to life as well, what you think you know or you want at 17 or 16 or 18, at the younger age, it goes through so many loops of evolution that sometimes you look back and you think, what the hell was I was naive about this industry, or I was very optimistic or hopeful about this specific company or journey. That is the ongoing process of, you get what you thought you wanted. It's not even that you didn't get it, you got it. And then you learn so much that it makes you want to pivot in a different direction. So you're always kind of evolving and zigzagging. And it's kind of overwhelming, right? But I think that's what it takes to build a career and to evolve in a way that's authentic to you, right? That's a key value for me, right?
Interesting. I like that take. That's a very cool. Yeah, that's a very cool take. Thank you so much for answering my lightning round questions. That was really, really cool. Let's move on to your journey, right? So you've spent over 15 years in marketing, leading marketing at a major pay tech firm, and now serving as a fractional CMO for an early stage SaaS company. That's quite the evolution in career. Can you kind of walk us through that journey? What originally drew you to that area?
Well, I think to make it even more of an evolution, right? If we go from the start, right? I started my career in advertising. I really wanted to study advertising and business and marketing, and then to work in a very specific space of creative strategy where we figure out what the problem with the market is, who the people are that we're supposed to sell stuff to, why are they not buying, what would make them buy, come up with ideas, do the positioning work, and create an awesome brand campaign. It was a dream because it allows you to study people. I went to endless focus group observing people when they ask weird questions. I went on like ethnographic research, like into people's houses, and talked to them about something. And then, it was a beauty brand. They would tell me one thing, I'd go into their bathroom, open the cabinet, and it's a completely different thing, right? So I love this sort of tension between what people say and what they do. I think it's fascinating, right? Because that's very human. And I really enjoyed that first part of my journey because that's what I wanted to do. I was obsessed with that career choice. But as you sort of get good at a certain level of skill, you also start noticing limitations of it. And limitation is however long you spend studying and finding out interesting stuff, you're going to output a TV ad. It's going to be a TV ad for a brand that everybody knows and loves. So you get to put that on your CV, but it's a TV ad, right?
Right.
At some point, whether it's cars or beauty or yogurts or supermarkets or commercial or retail banking, it's not really legacy. I made that ad is not exactly legacy, right? Even though the thinking was clever. So I then pivoted from big ad agencies, and it was good stuff, right? I did the first ever campaign for Airbnb when they were sort of Series C, I think. I researched that recently. Yeah, they were Series C. And I remember when we flew in to meet the team there, it was people who were like all about click-through rates. What are the ad click-through rates to the booking side? Whereas we had to tell them about the value of brand. And we looked like people from a completely different planet. And now what you see with Airbnb, they're sort of a poster child of balancing performance marketing and brand marketing to grow. So I'm glad that there was a successful conclusion to that saga. But I was right there, right in the beginning of it. So it's fun. Great projects, but I was like, why am I always making ads if I can be making products? So I went to consulting companies, right? I worked for Deloitte, I looked for Accenture in digital innovation, design, go to market, sending startups that were bought by corporates into different markets, right? Launching them, figuring out the business case, which is really interesting. But then, right, the good part is you start talking to CEOs rather than brand managers on the client side. The bad part is there's zero creativity in that. There are no creative leaps. There is no conceptual thinking. It's very data driven, which is very respectable, but that's not why I entered marketing in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And then the third sort of evolution of my career was leading a marketing department client side for a fintech company with an e-commerce payments, so plugins that you see on a store when you buy whatever you buy online, right? How exciting is a payments plugin, you'd think. But that was my job, to make it exciting. So if I'm given freedom to make it exciting, I will. And I still strongly believe that there is no boring vertical. There's no boring brand. There are plenty of boring brands because they choose to be. But even if you tell me supply chain, I will find a way to sex up supply chain.
Yeah.
I've done it with taxes really twice for 2 customers.
Well. Wow. Yeah, that's really impressive, though. It's like taking something that is, not necessarily particularly very interesting and making it a bit more kind of just emotionally connecting to a person. And it kind of perfectly leads me into my next question, which is around your newsletter, right? So B2B, that makes me feel things. Love the name, by the way. Love the name. Such a cool name.
Thank you.
But it's B2B marketing has been very much seen as kind of cold, rational, purely kind of metric driven. And I love the fact that you're kind of pushing against that stereotype. So my question for you is, like, what does it take to make a B2B brand feel something, to really kind of connect with the audience?
Oof. There are so many levels of answer to this question.
Mm.
So in my head, I already see two. One is sort of more pragmatic, how to, what to look at. And the
Right.
other one is the more sort of organizational. What does it take to actually run this work, right? Because then you have to have internal buy-in, approvals in bigger organizations, and actually put money behind it. So I'll try to answer it in two ways.
Okay.
In terms of what does it take to create the work? I think it's simple than many people think if the task is given to the right person, right? Because I've spent my earlier career in creative agencies, I've been immersed in those frameworks, ways of thinking, and just, the overall atmosphere of experimentation and being able to sit with a notepad, scribble down ideas, and then something big comes out of it, right? So I actually write about what it takes. There's no secrets, and the frameworks I use, and they are very freely available in the resources hub on my website. I have this section called "This is how we do it," where I publish all of my processes. And so when it comes to creating creative work, a lot of the time it's about knowing sort of your positioning. What is our big? If we were at a protest with a poster.
Right. Okay.
What does our poster say about our industry, right? Like, does it say this sucks and we're against it? Does it say this is the best way to do this? Because, most companies don't have a positioning. They say they're revolutionizing an industry that doesn't need revolutionizing, right? Like, that's B2B for you, right? So you have to have a strong positioning. You have to know what your tone of voice is, right? And most of the time, it's friendly but professional is what I get 90% of the time if I start working with a client. Of course, you want to be friendly and professional. But to what extent can you provoke? Are you self-deprecating, right? Because that can still be professional, but kind of self-aware. There's something funny, sassy about it.
Right.
You could be empathetic. That's a big emotion. And I go and explore different ways of layering emotion, because emotional communications perform 7 times better than rational one. We feel it registers, it's remembered, and then we have a positive perception of a brand that we might have only seen for the first time a minute ago, right? So it's a very under-leveraged skill in B2B to layer in emotions. And I have a framework of kind of emotions that one might explore for their product based on their vertical, based on, what the whether the buyer is problem aware or problem unaware, solution aware or solution unaware, right? I have a whole framework for that. So that's freely available on my website as well. So people can easily have a look and figure out what's that emotion, figure out the tone of voice. But most important thing is positioning. And then less is more, right? We always want to communicate 300 things in B2B because I understand why. There's a tech guy team, usually it's a guy though, that has built it. They're very smart, they're very proud, and they think the whole world needs to know. But the way the world will relate to that product is through their problem, not via how amazing the product is. Like, I can give you a box and it's really pretty, and you can be like, I have no clue why I would be excited about that, right? And that's what's happening in these environments. So less is more. Choose one thing that you want to say and say it out loud. So in terms of the pragmatic approach, there are ways. It's much easier. There are 2 ways of doing it. You could use my guides or other such frameworks and write it yourself. Or when I work with people, it takes me, a few hours to come up with stuff. It's very fast because my brain is trained to think that way. So that's why I do the work that I do, because we can come up with a campaign in a day for sometimes if it's really needed, right? And then the organizational level is much more complex. Because you're, as a marketer, responsible for how you're going to be perceived as an entire company by the world. And so everybody might want to have a say, right? If I am head of, I don't know, product, I would want us to be perceived a certain way. And I might think that this campaign is a bit too much this or too much that, right?
Right.
So you need an internal buy-in across different departments, upwards, downwards, across all the seniority levels, to be quite frank. That's a lot of time. That's a very time-consuming political buy-in journey, which is just, I think every marketer who's senior and comes into organization has to be ready that it's a slog. And maybe if they're coming into a job, know that they need to check how much of a slog there's going to be so that they're realistic about what it takes to actually run the work that they want to run. And again, that's something that I share a lot about on LinkedIn and on my website as well. Like, how do you find that battle and win that battle? So actually, to create good work, I might say, oh, it's easy. There's like a shortcut. There is, but it still takes quite a lot of time to execute. Oh, and then somebody was speaking at an event recently, and somebody asked me, well, like, you always have to make your product sound like epic in some way, right? So that it's memorable. And I think that's often a misconception that marketers or people have about marketing, or marketers have about their own jobs, is that it just has to be this super sort of positive story and maybe a lie or an exaggeration to deserve attention. You know, like marketers on TV lie to us about a bunch of things, right? Even in B2C categories, we're sort of, oh, it's just capitalism, right? But in reality, you just need to find a truth, the very interesting truth rather than a lie. Like, what's a really interesting like take on this vertical that if I were to tell you, you'd be like, hell yeah, right? And then amplify that truth rather than a lie. So I really stand by doing the research and finding a contrarian opinion, right? Like, for example, I read a lot of, when I do research on, I go to Reddit for the truth about a certain industry vertical, right? Or I go to memes by people in those jobs. So if I'm marketing to HR directors or CTOs, I find memes that show me what their jobs are like, right? Or founders, even for my own content. And that's when I know the truth. Like, yes, sure, they're overwhelmed, etc. Every job is like that by the sounds of it. But you also find nuances, looking at the truth that other people have put out there. And I find that quite fascinating, to be honest.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
It gives sort of marketer a good rep.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's very interesting, all of the things that you've covered so far. I really like it. And I want to now talk about your involvement with, it's Fame Overflow is what I think the company is called.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which focuses on helping early stage SaaS and tech companies scale, if I'm correct. Could you kind of tell us a bit about the company's mission and the approach?
Yeah, sounds good. So as I've been saying, I've been in kind of a weird career journey, right? From the creativity to data crunching and consulting to them running a department. And over time, to be quite frank, I realized there's so much that B2B marketers do wrong. And I don't blame them or judge them because, gosh, it's an overwhelming job. Right? But there has to be a way to help and support founders who actually need solid marketing help, but can't necessarily get a senior person who's been there, done that, and can have this critical view of what needs to be done and what's just a distraction. So that's how I started working, like became a fractional CMO, because that means that at any moment in time, I can be working with, well, usually my sweet spot is 2 to 3 clients, right? At the same time, where I'm able to affect sort of the futures of a bunch of smaller companies in terms of their go-to-market and actual likelihood to succeed. And if we speak specifically about startups, you know, there's this thing that 9 out of 10 fail, right? And most of the time they fail because they either build the wrong thing that nobody wants, or because they build it, but they didn't start talking about it in the right way, with the right messages soon enough to the right people, spend too much money on this or that. So it's all about the go-to-market strategy, which is what I'm trying to support them with. And my sort of unique angle with that is that creativity is the key. So you're going to do exactly what your competitors do, and you have less money, you're going to fail, right?
Yeah.
So you can't buy yourself success when you're competing with Salesforce.
Yeah.
Right? Or Oracle or whatever big company in the world. So you have to find a way to be smarter approach to your messaging, smarter approach to your even email marketing, events, any kind of marketing that you do. There's, with a touch of creativity, you get much better ROI. And smaller companies typically are fairly open to that because they've usually already gotten burned by somebody who said, oh, I'll get you 60 leads by the end of the month. And it's just a waste of time and money. And who are these people, right? So they know that they have to do it properly. And I come in and say, the only way you're going to outspend, you're going to be more visible than this really rich competitor is if you're much more punchy. And smaller companies are more willing to experiment, right? It's like whatever works, whatever brings the cash in. Whereas if you go to a larger company, I've worked at those, it's rounds and rounds of approvals in order to even run something that you might have created 2 months ago, right? So that's the edge. That's how you can win realistically as a smaller company. And I love doing that. And the reason it's called Fame Overflow is because I'm a massive nerd, actually. And FAME is a name of a most effective advertising strategy, scientifically based.
Okay.
So there are many strategies when it comes to communication that one might choose.
Right.
It could be, say we're better than our competition, right?
Okay.
Say that we are cheaper than our competition, but we're also really good, right? We're good, but cheaper. Say that we're exactly for people like you, Megan Brown, for your demographic. We're made for you. We're not made for them. We're made for you, right? Those are just examples of what a campaign might say. And then FAME is another strategy, and it's about attaching yourself to popular culture and what's actually happening in the world, right? So that's why I look at memes. That's why I look at Reddit, because that's what popular culture is, right? It's not a cheap insight, it's the real insight. It's what people wouldn't tell me in a focus group or in an interview because they don't want to say it to my face, right? But they've already made a meme about it. So that is proven to be the most effective communication strategy over decades of studies, of tens of thousands of submissions by nerdy people who study this sort of stuff in advertising across B2C and B. And it's 4 times more effective than the next most effective one. And nobody knows in tech, they're like never bumped into those scientific papers. They think maybe the fame is something. Didn't Kanye West had a song called Fame or something, right? Like it just, or Fame the movie, right? That's where their head is. But actually Fame is the best marketing strategies, which is what I'm trying to do for them. Not just for awareness, but because it's so sticky. It makes you see the brand. It makes you think, they get culture. They operate on my wavelength. We have a thing in common. That makes you like them. That makes you prefer them. Right. So it's not just an awareness play. It's actually a conversion play at the same time baked into it. And I'm really into using the shortcuts that science gives us.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why Fame Overflow, and Overflow is basically like a play on Stack Overflow. Right. So it's taking.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. That is so.
That's a story.
That makes a lot of sense. But that's so interesting. And it makes that's when you think about it, it's so obvious now. It's like, obviously you want to be the best marketing strategy. It just makes sense. And that's really cool. And I love that. And I really would love to get your advice for the kind of next question. So I want to get your advice for any people out there who are trying to grow a company or trying to grow a brand or whatever it is, trying to grow in the tech industry. What advice would you give them to kind of stand out and, take risks to showcase their product or whatever it is that they're trying to sell?
Okay, this will sound maybe a little bit weird, but I've genuinely learned that nobody cares about you.
Okay, nice.
And that's a greatest thing ever, right? That's the really great thing, because we, on an individual level and on a company level, we are so bothered because we are herd animals, right? What will people think about me when I do this thing and when I say this thing out loud?
Right.
I felt it when I started posting on LinkedIn. It took me forever to feel like I could post. Then I would obsess over every minute detail, freaking punctuation in my post, right? Because I was like, but I have to be perfect, right? But people actually don't identify very well with perfection, right? Like that's not how we connect to each other. We connect to each other on imperfection, because that's vulnerability. So that doesn't matter at all. And most of the time you're invisible, right? So you're choosing to, if you're scared of standing out in any kind of way by just showing up, doesn't even matter what you say, but just showing up in the first place, you are the one that's putting limits on your life. Okay. That sounds like some sort of life coach guru right now, but you are, right? Because you could have said things out loud, received feedback, provoked a debate, maybe gone viral, made a connection. But instead, because of the fear of judgment, you're holding yourself back. Nobody else. Nobody sat there like, don't type.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that has a tremendous cost. And in my life, I wish I knew this 10 years ago. I was scared of that 10 years ago. And it took me the last few years, a massive mindset shift to realize that nobody cares enough to judge me, but clearly I care enough to censor myself. So that's really bad. That's bad.
Yeah.
So start from the assumption that it doesn't even matter what the outcome is, right? I think that's, if you lose this self-censorship, it's quite a refreshing way to live, right? Focus on outputting.
Okay.
Don't focus on emotion. Like, give yourself a target, like you're doing, right? I want to do X amount of podcast episode with these kinds of people, bam. And then you'll see what the opportunities come, what conversations you get, like how that might redirect your future career aspirations. I don't know. Anything, right? But if you hadn't started doing it, you'd miss out on all of it. It doesn't even matter if it's good or bad at the start, because to get good, you have to be bad at first, right? It's a new thing.
I mean, that's
so
that's
nobody
how we
cares
learn.
is really nobody cares is a really powerful piece of advice, honestly. If you apply it rids you of all the potential for shame. I have an example. I go dancing as well. I don't know. Have you been to do you dance? Have you been to a dancing studio?
I've been to a dancing studio.
No,
yes.
it's yeah. Like, this big wall of mirror.
Yep.
And then everybody's just dancing at the mirror, right?
Yep.
And first few times when I started going, I was like, oh my God, everybody's going to know that I fuck up. And it's so obvious because there's a mirror.
Right.
Not a single time have I looked at another person in the mirror whilst I was dancing. Because if I do, I'll get distracted and fail. So I'm looking at myself. They're looking at themselves. Nobody's looking at each other. Nobody cares.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good example, though. That's a really good example. But it's so true, though. I love the way that you said this, because it's like the way that I've lived my life for like majority of my life, which I feel like I'm quite lucky. I've kind of found that whole, literally no one cares. You can do whatever you want. Like, I'm like the enemy to social anxiety. It's just, nope, no one cares.
That's a huge achievement these days.
It's very helpful. But yeah, no, I love this. I love the way that you put it. And the mirror, it makes total sense. So funny. But I really want to dig into your frameworks now, because you talked a little bit about them. And I want to understand, what is challenger brand methodology? What does that mean?
Good. So challenger brand methodology is a marketing/business concept that was invented or was labeled as that. Let's put it that way. Something like that existed before, but a few decades ago. So it's not new. It was first put together in a book called Eating the Big Fish. I know it's a great title, right? Because it's so memorable, because it's what the hell, right? But it's called Eat the Big Fish, or Eating the Big Fish. Don't quote me on that. And it's about how a small challenger brand, right? So any small brand that comes to a market that's dominated by bigger companies is a challenger brand. It's supposed to challenge the market, right? How these small brands can win against big players who have existing awareness, existing customers, more money, more people. They're just like the default. So what do you do? Like, how the hell do you build a business? And it's not a small notion whatsoever, not new, not niche, it's mainstream. And every single agency I've worked at has their own framework that is very similar to that. It's different. Honestly, it's circles and triangles and in different shapes, combinations. But they all claim the same thing. You look at what's happening and what are the norms of the market or the category, the industry, and then you figure out what sucks and what needs to be different, and then you name it. If you as a little brand come in and tell me that's the problem that I'm solving, and you're the first one to name the problem rather than pretend that it doesn't exist, then the market starts listening, because it's the true problem, and they assume just subconsciously that you are the one who knows how to solve it, and that's how you become the preferred brand. I'll give you examples, because it's like very theoretical. First time that I used it really well in the Fame Overflow and as a company was with a client who was in HR technology. They kind of send little surveys to figure out, are people happy? Are they hating their jobs? Are they about to quit? Are they about to burn out? So they're really handy, but there's about dozens of other solutions that do similar thing, especially by corporates, right? Existing corporates. So how the hell are you as a Series A startup at the time going to find that? And they tried everything. They just did cold emailing, saying we're great. It didn't work. And I mapped it and I was like, what's the problem with HR technology? The fact that HR technology exists, these surveys exist, and you can send even more surveys. And then you can analyze them in very different way. But fundamentally, they're all operating in the world where corporate culture sucks. It's broken. right? And if we look specifically to the recent years, right, with a layoff on top of another layoff with a layoff on top, right? That's what all the news are. One day you're like, we're all a family. And the other day you're like, well, now you have to abandon your family at home in order to go to your full-time, you're no longer remote. Like you got to return to the office, abandon your puppy and your child. So it's a really messed up world, right? And there is a lot of conversation about it between people as humans and as professionals. And I'm sure like everybody in their circle have talked about, oh my God, my boss, right? So corporate culture, bad, but there are so many tools, and therefore we can conclude that those tools are not very helpful, right? So I was like, well, why don't we become the tool that says corporate culture is broken, we're on a journey to fix it, and here are like new things that we're doing differently, right?
Right.
If it was just we have a slightly better feature here and there, nobody's listening. But if you say 300 tools and corporate culture is still broken, people are listening. So you have to find this tension, and then you have to be the one to call it out. So you got to ask the provocative question, and they're a relatively small player among very corporate larger players, so they need to say something that is going to shake it. And I've done the same for taxes, I've done the same for e-commerce payments, I've done the same for customer experience analytics, LLM models, you know, like all kinds of verticals. You just need to find what is that interesting angle, what's not working in the industry that we can stand up against, like at this protest with this little billboard or
it's
kind of protest sign. And there's a framework of mapping it and researching.
It's kind of like a satirical idea, so you're poking fun at the problem. It's kind of like that is how I would kind of understand it a bit better, which is super interesting, and it makes sense because you're just saying, this is wrong, I'm going to do it differently. You know, it's like it's as simple as that, and it makes total sense. And it's a really good framework,
and then you get attention, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sort of a quick summary with some examples, but there's obviously an actual framework with x-axis and y-axis and what goes where, and then a messaging hierarchy, and how do you use that messaging hierarchy across different touch points for your marketing and la-di-da. I have all of that recorded. I have a little video on my website, again, in the This Is How We Do It hub on it. And I have a PDF that tells why this is the way, how it works, step by step, totally free. So anybody who's listening who wants to dig into it totally can.
Awesome.
And because there's been interest in that, once I started explaining this fairly like established marketing framework to smaller companies, they often ask me, should I read that book? And I was like, well, it's kind of too theoretical for you, and you kind of need to make a move on with your marketing. And it's not for SaaS, and it's maybe a little bit out of date, given it's been written decades ago. And a few said, why don't you write the book? So I'm actually writing a version that talks about challenger brand thinking and this simplified process that I've sort of created, the stupid simple process, in order to spread the word about it. And I'm sort of halfway through the book at the moment.
Interesting. That's very cool. That's very cool. Yeah, as I said, I want to go into story time now. But I want to understand like how you became a snowboard instructor, because I feel like that's a very random thing, but also really cool at the same time. So how did that happen?
I guess it is quite random. Well, the obvious start is I was snowboarding, right? I started snowboarding as a teenager. I grew out of my skis. I hated skiing. It's clumsy. It's awkward. I still don't like it.
Okay.
This is not supposed to happen. We're not supposed to have long sticks on our heads, on our feet that cross each other. It's awkward. And as a teenager, I grew out of my skis, obviously, and started snowboarding. I sucked at it absolutely terribly for approximately 3 years. I was bruised. I was scared. I could only turn on one side for multiple seasons, which is very inconvenient if you want to go down the mountain.
Yeah, it's not great.
And at the same time, there was this sort of a factor of, well, I enjoy it. I think it's cool. I like the vibe. You know, snowboarding is very related to like skateboard culture. And that was big when I was growing up, and hip hop music. And basketball. I used to play basketball as well. So it's kind of the same vibe. And I thought like that this really suits me. I want to continue doing that. And I've been snowboarding sort of on and off for 20 years now, more than that, potentially 25. You know, I've had some bad injuries. I've stopped snowboarding I had to start again and be super scared because what if you get another injury, and gone through that cycle. And for all that time, I was thinking, if only somebody explained things to me properly when I was little, like in a way that I could understand, it would have been such a massive shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
And, I live in Sweden, so there's a way to teach and become a snowboard instructor. I teach right now at 2 schools, Sweden's biggest school and Stockholm's biggest school. Very different. It's 2 hills in and around Stockholm. Sometimes it's beginner, like kids, 5 upwards, 5 until like 12-ish. Then we have teenagers, but usually they just figure it out by themselves, honestly. And then we have adults, and I've had 65-year-olds come in for their first ever snowboarding lesson. I know. And of course they're scared, especially if they've never done like snowboarding or skateboarding or surfing or any standing sideways sport. Of course they're scared. Why? It's completely unnatural, right?
Yeah.
And I find it extremely fun and empowering to be able to read their mind and understand where the fear is coming from. Because overall, fear is very reasonable. If you're on a freaking slippery slope going downwards at speed, of course, you're supposed to be scared, right? Like, it would be psychotic if you weren't.
Yeah.
I've done the snowboarding instructor qualification. It's a long course. It's a very big book, and you do write an exam, written exam, I think 2 or 3 hours in pen. You do run lessons. You are tested in all the theory, including physics of snowboarding.
Okay.
Right? So it's a whole thing. So now when I see a person struggling, I can very quickly say exactly why they're doing it, what's making them do it that way logically, and why it's illogical. And so for some people, I need to explain. I find that with adults, I really need to explain to them why physically, by doing what I'm telling them, they're not going to crash. And sometimes I exaggerate and do it myself just to prove it to them. But often I just explain like with physical terms, like we start with gravity, you know?
Yeah.
And when with kids, for example, with smaller kids, they don't have the motorics yet, so you can't be overly detailed in your movements, right? So you kind of just try to land the good posture with exaggerated movements. With teenagers, there's a lot about peer pressure, right? They just need to be cool among each other. And they're very self-conscious. So you have to find a game that distracts them so they don't start comparing themselves to others or be fearful. And I find that it's like really fun. It gets me to be on snow. It gets me to solve problems, right? Every lesson is 90 minutes of problem solving. You might have your like notes of this kind of group. We're probably going to do this based on conditions and their level that I remember from the last time, and the group dynamics. It all goes out of the window, like in the first 5 minutes.
Nice.
So then you're just figuring it out and like trying to not lose a child that suddenly snowboards into the woods. Like that's the objective.
That's the important part.
Yeah, I hope that they come back happy and with new skills, but I need them to come back. That's
alive.
The most important part. Rather than just start moving sideways uncontrollably and I have to run after them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
no, that's super cool.
So how do you become a snowboarder? You a snowboarding instructor, you snowboard and then you do a bunch of exams.
Yay.
And sometimes in the beginning you teach without being an instructor, you're kind of shadowing and helping, and then you run the school once you've done it, and with time you get more progressed and more advanced sort of people.
Very cool.
The demand is usually for basics, for beginners, but sometimes you get like 2 teenagers who want to do cool stuff in the park, but they can't stand still properly, so that's problematic.
Yeah, but very cool.
You still have to do the lesson and make something up.
Yeah, sounds super interesting though. Yeah, so we're sadly coming to the end of the podcast, but I do have 3 final questions for you. The first one is, imagine it's 2035. What does your life look like?
Oh my God, that's such a good question.
Yeah.
I haven't been planning 10 years ahead, I'll be honest with you. I'm more like a two-year horizon maximum, and maybe that's my mistake. This is really good. So I've told you already, I'm trying to make this challenger brand thinking and overall marketing, good marketing thinking, fairly mainstream in the tech industry. And I found that the more junior teams, the smaller teams need it more because they don't have time to waste. And easier to sort of impact with this because they just want stuff that works. So that's why I'm writing a book. And I mean, if I were to dream about it, I'd want 1,000 people to have read my book.
Awesome.
That would be pretty cool. And that book become sort of a cornerstone for early stage, particularly SaaS marketing SaaS marketing. So that the idea of standing out is like a must have rather than a sort of, an afterthought. And the idea that you need a leader who understands creativity is a central role of what marketing is.
Definitely.
And in order to do that, I'm plugging in sort of my own examples of past work, statistics, results, examples into the book. That's sort of the important part for me. I also do a lot of speaking events. My most recent one was about go-to-market strategies, and it was titled Why You Can't Afford to Be Boring. So it's very much tying creativity with profitability or budget or lack of budget.
Yeah.
And I would love to do a lot more on that. I would love to be able to spread the message, spread the good example, and reduce the fear of creativity or experimentation among the crowd, tech and potentially non-tech. So those are the big sort of things I want to spearhead in the next 10 years. And in order to, obviously keep the ball rolling, I'd need to be working with a lot more quantity-wise SaaS teams that are wanting to implement this level of thinking. And that's why I do my offering as a fractional CMO, where within 8 weeks, we can do something very memorable and extraordinary that really gets people talking about you. So by 2035, I think I would like to have the book as a recognized sort of reading.
Cool.
Within the tech circles, maybe academically as well, and be one of those texts that people refer to.
Yeah.
And I'd love to be on stage spreading the gospel and have a really lovely long list of clients with whom we've been able to achieve it. And if it goes that as well as I'm explaining right now, then, well, probably a team supporting me in that. I'd love to keep bringing together people from the two worlds, like the tech world who understand, the constraints of it, the demand generation parts, the fact that you need to meet targets, and the more traditional marketers that I've worked with in agencies who know what creative and conceptual thinking is. They just need to do it a lot faster. Right. And the challenge is to meet the constraints of B2B, still with creativity. I think that would be a superbly fun organization to have, make sure that it's delivered sort of at scale.
Definitely. Okay, so the next question is, how can listeners follow along with your journey?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me by my name, so Diana Järzel. It might be hard to spell the Swedish way, but try me. If you look for Diana, who's a fractional CMO, you'll see me. I have this like lime neon green background. You'll see me on it pretty easily. So LinkedIn is the easiest way. Follow me. If you're listening to this episode, send me a note, connect with me and say hi. That'd be super cool to know. I also have a website where I'm publishing basically what will eventually become the book. I have 4 chapters now out of 8 available, and those are the free guides and frameworks that I'm sharing. Completely free. There's no like email opt-in needed. Although if you do want to have them delivered to your inbox on a regular basis, I think I will able to organize that as well. A newsletter, B2B that made me feel things. Do sign up, give me your email, and then it's in your inbox. I publish it about once a month right now. And honestly, I've seen so much great B2B work that I have a backlog. I should be publishing it 4 times a month because there's a lot of inspiration for all of us. And it's examples of work from around the world that I like, including some from myself and my clients, as well as science of why this would work, why it makes sense strategically, why they did it this way. So people can read it and be like, oh, I'm going to implement it because it works for a company exactly like mine. Those are the main ways to keep up with me. But also, you can just like DM me at any time to chat. I love meeting people and discussing ideas, and every new conversation gets me closer to a new way of thinking. So I think you're very welcome. I would love that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, so the last question is, how can listeners be useful to you?
Spread the word. I think that's very simple. Spread the word, either about the challenger brand thinking or about the need to be bold and stand out in B2B. It's sadly, a pretty radical notion. Once this podcast is published, share it with someone who you think this could be useful to. Direct them to my newsletter or my profile. That's how, immediately so. And once I If you want to get your hands on the first copies of the book, I'd be really glad to make it available to you, because I need somebody to read it and give me reviews. So that's how you can be really useful.
Great.
If you want to be on the VIP list, let me know.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm really looking forward to following along with your journey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited, Megan. I'm happy to be in the lineup of awesome women in tech that you've been having on the podcast. And I'm really excited about this episode coming out and hearing what people think. I love all sorts of opinions and feedback and discussions. Hit me up.
Yeah, lovely.
Super lovely to chat to you, and some really provocative questions. Now I need a 10-year strategy.
Yeah.
I did not wake up this morning thinking that's the case.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, follow us on your favorite podcasting app. Do consider leaving us a review, as it helps the podcast tremendously.